Throughout my 2 years of learning Japanese, I've noticed that everybody strongly advises against learning Japanese through anime. They say that it'll make your speaking unnatural and it won't come in handy in real life, and I'm here to tell you they're full of shit. As you can see, I live in Japan, and 90% of the Japanese that I know actually comes from anime. I'm easily able to speak to friends, people at my school, customer service, and it's mostly thanks to anime. And by the end of this video, you're also going to learn how to become fluent in Japanese through anime. Because if this white little gaijin twink can do it, then so can you. So before I reveal all the secrets about learning Japanese through anime, it's important to look at the reasons why everybody preaches that learning Japanese through anime will ruin your life. I was personally discouraged from learning Japanese through anime for about a year, which detrimentally slowed me down. If you're learning Japanese, there's a good chance you've been discouraged from it as well, and I'm here to tell you the truth. The biggest claim is that learning Japanese through anime will make you sound very unnatural. But the last time I tried to speak to a convenience employee, he did not find my Japanese rude at all because I know how to speak natural Japanese.
All I said was, "Oi oi oi teme, bosato shinai de, ore ni famichiku o motte koi."
And he quickly handed me the fried chicken that I politely asked for. This is because I know how to tell apart cartoonish Japanese and real life Japanese. And eventually, if you watch enough anime, you'll be able to tell the two apart as well. It works the exact same way in English. Even if you learn all of your English from cartoons like SpongeBob or Fairly Odd Parents, you'll eventually be able to sound natural. I mean, you're not just gonna go up to like the Starbucks employee and be like, "Hey you, quit loafing around and bring me a cup of joe." Now, of course, this isn't to say that anime Japanese is normal, because anime is really weird. Sorry to say it, but it's true. They say weird things because they're in weird situations and they're just weird characters. But this is actually a good thing if you want to learn Japanese, and believe it or not, it means you should watch more anime. Let me explain. If you only watch one anime, you're gonna be way worse than the guy who watches 1,000. Yes, you'll probably smell better and have seen more sunlight, but if you're watching this channel, then that's probably not your goal right now. What actually happens as you watch more anime is it strengthens your baseline understanding of the most common sentences. In other words, you begin to develop a stronger foundation for the language. As you watch a more diverse amount of anime, you begin to pick up on the things that are said by no matter who. Just like in English, there are certain things that need to be said by everybody because it's just basic grammar. The great thing about this is that these are the things that are going to be said in real life Japanese as well. You'll begin to notice that only a few characters say stuff like yada yada or datte that's just not used in real life Japanese. As you watch more anime, you begin to appreciate how the vocabulary choice helps flesh them out as a character. If there's a really cool character, it'll begin to make more sense why they're so cool once you understand their word choice and their tone of speech. This is why a lot of people learn Japanese to watch anime, and I don't blame them because it helps them understand the anime a lot better. There's a lot of characters that I realized that I don't really understand in English, but when I watch the anime in Japanese, I begin to understand them and hence like them a lot better. Honestly, after learning Japanese, I can say that watching anime is twice as fun as it used to be. Also, the great thing is, no matter how extravagant the character and their word choice, you're going to improve your Japanese by listening to them. This is because they still have to use a grammatical pattern and they have certain sentence patterns that you need to pick up on. They still have to use particles and context clues. It doesn't matter how far you are into Japanese, having exposure to the fundamentals is always going to help rather than hurt. It's like saying you should avoid the assisted machine bench press rather than the actual bench press because the bench press is more natural, but either way, you're still working out the same muscles. Honestly, I have no idea why I'm using a comparison to the gym in a video about anime. So you're probably wondering, okay, then how do I learn how to speak normal Japanese? And that's a pretty important question if you ever want to get good at speaking. Later in this video, I'm going to talk more about the route that I took, but first I'm going to say something crazy. In the early stages of Japanese, I recommend you avoid speaking as much as possible. I will make a lot more videos later on explaining why I think this, but just know I'm not the first to say it. But basically the idea is when you begin to speak without knowing much vocabulary and grammar, you begin to build a bunch of bad habits that become really hard to break later on. But if your goal is to speak Japanese well, anime is not going to get in your way. Early on, your goal should be to get as much input as possible. And if anime is the only way you want to do so, then go watch some anime. The more input you get, the better your speaking will be. So the best way to get good at speaking normal Japanese is to get a variety of input that allows you to express yourself in a manner to what you hear. And honestly, in most anime, people don't even talk too crazy. Slice of Life, for example, has a lot of normal Japanese, and I recommend these. If you're not sure that the anime that you're watching is good for learning Japanese, then stick around because I'm going to drop a lot of the resources that I used. Also, something funny that I noticed is that the same people that will tell you not to use anime to learn Japanese are like the same people who are learning Japanese through their Genki or Minna no Nihongo textbooks like exclusively. I can't speak for everybody that knows Japanese, but personally, I would rather you sound like an anime character than a textbook. Even when it comes to basic input and learning new words, I would rarely pick a textbook over anime. I would say if you know absolutely nothing, a textbook is a much better starting point than anime, but after a while, a textbook becomes useless. Unless you enjoy textbooks, I would honestly move on from it once you know a few words and you got the basics down. I actually started off with textbooks myself, and eventually I did ditch it for anime. So let me explain to you what I did, because from here on, you can start taking stuff from this video and applying it for yourself. So believe it or not, When I came to Japan, I had very little knowledge of Japanese. I learned hiragana and katakana and maybe like 50 words, and I thought that was enough to get by. It wasn't. I barely scraped by, and every Japanese person probably hated interacting with me, understandably. I eventually started wanting to learn more, so I picked up a textbook from a random library called Genki. Honestly, I get a shiver down my spine every time I hear that word, but that's because I took this textbook seriously. I spent probably like 3 hours a day trying to get through this textbook as quickly as I could, and I made a flashword for every word that I saw. Eventually, I did begin to develop somewhat of a foundation. I knew how sentences worked, and I was pretty good for my position. However, after a certain point, the textbook and the time I put into it began to show like diminishing returns. So I had to find a new medium, otherwise I'd be stuck for a long time. Also, as I worked through this textbook, I used this software to learn kanji called Wanikani. It's really good, but it's like $8 a month, so that kind of sucks. I'll make another video about kanji later, but after I learned about 300, I started switching to anime to learn Japanese. Now this is where you're gonna learn some good stuff, so pay close attention. There's something called sentence mining, where you take every sentence that you see in anime and you make a flashcard out of it. If the sentence has a word or grammar point that you don't know, you just make a flashcard out of it. There's some free and paid software that will do this for you, but if you're crazy enough, you can manually do it with Anki. I first did this with My Neighbor Totoro. It took me about 4 days, but I eventually got through the whole movie, and I made a flashcard of every sentence that I didn't understand. I finished with about 150 flashcards, and I learned over 300 words. So I stuck with it, and I started watching more anime so I could make more flashcards. I think the next anime I watched was Bunny Girl Senpai. It's an incredible anime for learning words, and I highly recommend it to intermediate learners. It uses a lot of real-life Japanese. Like, there have been situations where I remember saying a sentence that I copied directly from this anime in real life. I was a bit thrown off by the name at first, but it turns out there's a really good story, and there's not as much Bunny Girl Senpai as I was not hoped. After sentence mining that show, I had about 800 flashcards, and I was improving the quickest that I ever had. I would name all of the anime that I sentence mined and recommend it to you, but I have something better in stock. There are 2 websites that I used to decide what anime I was going to watch next, and these websites will take you very far. The first one is called jpdb.io. This is not only a great website with a great anime list, but it's also one of the best Japanese dictionaries I've ever used, probably the best. This is an extremely underrated resource, especially the dictionary. Like, every time you look a word up, you'll get a frequency chart of how commonly it's used. And the anime difficulty list goes from 1 to 10, 10 being the most difficult. I'd recommend beginner and intermediate learners to stick to 1 out of 10 and 3 out of 10 difficulty. Only do 4 out of 10 and above once you feel like 3 out of 10 is too easy for you. There's another website that I've used a couple times called learnjapaneseanime.com. And the way it works is 7 is the hardest and 1 is the most difficult, because why not? Why not just change it up randomly? Sure. JPDB has more anime entries, but this one is a lot more personal because he'll give you like a little spiel about every anime he watched. I noticed that as I continued to sentence mine and make more flashcards, I was by far making the most progress I ever had in my life. It is by far the best method for me personally, and if you like anime, then I highly recommend doing this. And if you want to improve your Japanese with anime even further, I have one more secret for you. You can find condensed anime audio on Reddit that will cut out everything except the dialogue. And yes, I know that sounds like the most Reddit thing in the world, but it exists. You can just plug this into an MP3 player or iPod and listen to this every day, all day on repeat. And there's a massive community of people who do this. It's called AJAT. All Japanese, all the time. The idea is that if you're doing nothing else, you can just play this audio in the background, and every time that you listen to it, you're slightly getting better at Japanese. And I will admit, I did this for like a month or 2. Listen, I was at a dark point, okay? I stopped because I was slowly beginning to lose my sanity, but the best thing is that it was the same sentences that were in my flashcards. So every time I was listening to the sentences, I was also getting better at my flashcards. I highly recommend this combo if you're willing to take things to the extreme, but I highly doubt that more than a few people are mentally ill enough to qualify for being able to do this every day. But for those of you who are, I can pretty much guarantee that if you do this every day, you will eventually reach fluency, or whatever milestone you have. I don't even know what fluency is. So yeah, next time someone tells you that anime Japanese isn't real Japanese, tell them that their parents' love isn't real love. Yeah, tell them that they were adopted. Tell them they'll never understand the love of a biological parent because they're adopted. Tell them again in Japanese while you're at it. Anime is a great resource. In fact, anything that's in Japanese is a great resource. I don't know why we're complicating this. But if you start Naruto running around Shibuya Crossing screaming yada yada baka, I am not responsible. Anyway, subscribe to become instantly fluent in Japanese. You will become fluent literally at the click of a button, I promise.